just want to applaud that. I'm going to pass the mic to some other people, but I'd like to interject a question. I know we have a lot of, in addition to Richard Feigen, a lot of major art dealers here in this room as part of the marketplace. Is there anyone who would disagree with that statement? You know, okay, I said I would pass the mic, but David, you raised your hand, and that's David Nash, another major dealer. So do we have a mic for David, and then we'll pass the mic.
My name is David Nash.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would like to think that Richard Feigen's view about the morality of American buyers.
Can you speak into the mic, please? Yeah.
I would like to think that Richard is correct about the morality of American buyers, but there are dozens of very, very rich buyers outside this country who I don't think care a damn. You have the government of Qatar, which is spending billions of dollars every year on works of art. You have Russian billionaires. You have I don't know if Chinese billionaires are in the market yet, but I think there are plenty of other people who would be very happy to pick at the pieces.
So if the museums, according to Walter Liedtke, are not going to touch it, and according to Richard, most of the major dealers of the stature of Richard in the U.S. won't touch it, you feel that there's, without even that network, there are enough people out there who will touch it that there really is a market?
I think there definitely is a market, yes.
Scary. Nick, I can't see back there if someone has the mic. Yeah.
Hi, yes, Richard Lehan from Strophius Art Law. I just wanted to ask, normally the AG, the Attorney General, is responsible for charitable trusts. Does that situation change? Do we have any litigation or prior experience with an AG interacting to protect charitable trusts in a bankruptcy situation, particularly with all that's been said about an urban bankruptcy?
Yeah, actually we do. Although I don't know the exact parameters of the situation, but in 1999, the Allegheny Health Education and Research Foundation, known as AHERF, Pittsburgh-based, ran a bunch of hospitals in Pennsylvania, went into bankruptcy. And the Pennsylvania AG was all over that one. And Michigan statutes specifically give the Michigan Attorney General the right to enforce charitable trusts. So given his opinion and that statute, we suspect he would be equally involved if this came to litigation.
So does a lot depend on his judgment, or will his office necessitate that he remain vigilant, is my question.
I think you should ask him that question.
So it is up to him. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if it's up to him or not, but I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there another person in the back? Otherwise, I know I have plenty of takers up front here.
Hi, my name is Paula Rosen, and I'm a publisher of an education newspaper. And I'm going to take a direction that's totally different than anybody else has mentioned so far. I was at the American Museum of Natural History the other day. Ellen Futter, former president of Barnard College and now the head of that museum, gave its first 4 PhD degrees from the museum. So that museum essentially, and about 14 MATs, Master of Arts in Teaching. That museum essentially has become a university. And isn't that a way for a museum to raise additional revenue as well as getting tremendous public support?
Any takers? Anyone on the panel?
Well, we have been, especially since from before the taxes, especially since we've been looking at a number of initiatives. We looked at what we were calling an academy, where we would, because there's so little art in Detroit region schools and Michigan in general, of an academy that would teach the teachers. And by the time you put the resources into it, we once again become a non-profit. I mean, the amounts of the sums that it's being suggested that we find are of, as I said earlier, of a magnitude that is, I think, is self-defeating. But for whatever reason that they have, and I don't know those reasons, that $500 million is basically the sum that they're suggesting that we somehow find. So, you know, we are because we don't want, we're determined not to be portrayed as being uncooperative. We're looking at all of these various options, even whether or not I personally think that they're realistic, but I have my board, a very diligent group on my board, examining these various options so that we can say doesn't work in the way that you might want it to. But that's our situation. I think museums. I like to think the DIA is doing some adventuresome things, doing different things to create what I think of Andre Malraux's Museum Without Walls. But one thing that I've learned is when someone says, how do museums do this? The answer is, which museum are you talking about? Because we really are all very, very different organizations.
Just another point, universities raise most of their money from their alumni, and it'd be a long time before you have that kind of alumnus or alumna.
Has it been suggested by anyone that the state buy or somehow take over the museum?
We have it's not a formal proposal, but we suggested and have submitted through our lobbyists to individuals at the state capitol that, as we were when Sam was director of the museum, that we construe ourselves again as a state museum, and we wouldn't need a huge amount of money each year to get back into that kind of programming, but under those aegis, we are suggesting that the state could buy the collection, and it could become a state collection, and then this would go away forever. And I didn't hear this directly. I was told that when this was outlined to one of the governor's representatives, the answer was, we think it's easier if you sell a few paintings.
Okay. I don't know where the mic is in the back. We'll take another question in the back and then back up front here.
Hello, Alexandra Pierce. I'd like to ask the director, you've traditionally had a very wealthy group of donors supporting the museum for decades. Even in the current problems with Detroit, the families remain fairly well established, and they've been very generous as a whole. Is there something a community of people who have supported Detroit in the past and the Institute in the past could do at this point? Is there anything your own donors can do to help you get out of this?
We've been meeting with all of our senior significant donors, private, corporate, and foundations, and the answer, as it was given by the Ford Foundation earlier this week to us, we don't do that. Because what they don't do is give money to be passed on to settle other people's debts. When we've been an independent institution now for 16 years, we have our own pension fund. We had no pension fund when we started in 1997. We have a healthy pension fund that is secure for the people who work for the DIA Inc. We've done that in 16 years. When you hear that going back to the 60s, the people in charge of the fund, with the knowledge and the votes of City Council, were sending out what are called 13th checks regularly.
Yes.
And that, according to Kevin Orr, they expended the equivalent of $2 billion over the decades. It's when you hear, I mean, my blood pressure's going up again just repeating it. That's what people are reading. So you go to a foundation and it's like, well, I don't think so. I mean, this is a problem that foundations and trustees don't feel in any way whatsoever that it's right for them to respond to with serious funds.
Like most institutions, your wall of donors actually calls the top level guarantors. Are they guaranteeing? Are they stepping up for you?
I think that's probably an honorific title.
Apparently.
I'm sorry. You're suggesting that my supporters should come up with several $100 million to give to settle city debts?
No, I'm asking you what's the status of that on their part.
Well, we have been raising before the millage up to $18 million a year to keep the DIA's doors open and the museum active. In the last, since 2008, almost every penny of that has come from individuals and from foundations. We get fantastic support, but one of the reasons we persuaded everyone that a tax was the best thing to do is because we were seeing serious donor fatigue. I've been through 3 campaigns since 1999 and raised $360 million out of a community that has all kinds of troubles. So generosity, I really don't think is the question with my supporters.
Let me put one other piece on that. It's one thing to raise money every year to support the operations of the museum. But if the museum were to go to donors and say, we'd like you to raise money to pay the debts that the city of Detroit incurred that have nothing to do with the museum, how do you think they would feel?
People give to winners, not losers.
I don't even need to go that far. They give to the museum to support the museum.
And as I understand it, the issue is the museum is doing okay. The issue is not the museum. The issue is the city and the jeopardy that the museum has been put into.
Yeah, I mean, the great irony of this is that the museum, dare I say it myself, is a huge success story as far as Southeast Michigan is concerned.
I think that's an important point in this discussion, that because of the unusual relationship with the city, the museum has been put in jeopardy, but the museum itself is not going bankrupt, and is not at risk of going bankrupt. I think someone in the third row here has the mic. Oh, I thought you already had. No. Was it your hand that was up before? No, I thought it was. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kate Daimling, and my question is it known when Christie's will complete its evaluation, whether they will publicly release their findings, and how much they're being paid to do the evaluation and where the money is coming from?
Yeah, please do.
It's been public that they were paid $200,000 for the evaluation. It is not currently, nobody has said that Christie's will publicly release that, so we don't know. I can't tell you whether they will or they won't. And I think there has been public talk of it being completed sometime next month. But I just don't recall what the public statements have been on that exactly.
If you give it to Randy, and then we're going to go to the back again. Louder, please.
Randy Rosen. I just want to say, first of all, I just came back from the DIA, and Graham, it was an exciting, alive museum, and the inner city community and every other level. It was not an elitist experience by a long shot, so congratulations on that. I'd like to know what the art community is doing as a whole to get behind you, because the DIA is a national museum as well as a Detroit museum. And I think if they were to close, rather if they were to ask the Met to deaccession its artwork, the whole country would be in a storm, and it would not be doable. And I don't think it should be for the DIA. What is the art world doing to support you with the EM, and what can it do? Thank you. What can it do to help the museum?
Well, the answer really is that all of this is going on in back rooms, and my feeling is that having people like us write to Kevin or the governor, that is what they would expect. I don't think it will have much effect at all. We're really in the hands of we're in this strange legal and political situation, and as I say, and as Rich repeated, we're just sort of trying to find our way in a situation that is very, very blurred, where everything is just very, very blurred.
Any other questions? Nick, we can probably take 2 or 3 more, and that's about it.
Hi, thank you. Irina Tarsis with Center for Art Law. I have I'm quite optimistic. I don't think DIA's collection is going to be sold. So I think at the end of this exercise, you'll have a very good, complete catalog of everything you're holding. My question is, have you seen any private individuals who have not donated sending spontaneous checks in? Have you thought of doing a Kickstarter and just seeing how the community reacts? Because there has been a story, at least recently, that a Detroit Masonic temple received a donation from one of the Detroit natives. I don't know if he was approached or if he was acting out of the kindness of his heart, but he donated $140,000 to cover back taxes. So I hope you are seeing people who are not your donors reacting positively. If you can comment on that. And my follow-up question is, if and when you are out of bankruptcy, when you're out of bankruptcy and the collection is still there, will there be a mechanism in place to protect the museum from a similar exercise? God forbid it happens again.
Well, when we went into this, before it became quite as adversarial as it has, we talked about that this should be the opportunity to make sure that something like this never happens again. And the quid pro quo of us coming up with these vast sums of money would be the transfer of the collection to the away from the city into a safe, something like a safe haven, and that is what we were aiming for when we made this outline proposal to individuals in the governor's office and in the legislature about becoming a state entity, that whatever funds the state, and Michigan has a surplus, state surplus right now, would make the collection safe. And of course, obviously, if we go to litigation and if it works in our favor, then we'll be safe that way too, but that's by no means certain. We've had some contributions from individuals. We talked about the idea of a kind of a Facebook legal defense fund, but the nightmare of administering something like that right now, we decided that we would just we would hold back. Ironically, we did some very ferocious cuts a few years ago as we prepared to make the DIA financially stable. And one of the things that we did is now what the city is going to do and save itself millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, is do away with retiree health care and go to a stipend, a monthly stipend instead. And that basically freed up a reservoir of funds. So we're in a position of being able to fight this quite extensively.
I'd like to put one little footnote on this, and that is that there are a few works of art in the collection that have what I believe is called a remainderman clause, and that is that they are given with the understanding that they will never be sold, and if the museum does want to sell them, then the work will go to some other recipient. I expect we may see more such clauses in the future.
Another question? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we have, in the agreement I mentioned that all the works of art are owned by the city of Detroit. We have gone with that, making that the default, but the same clause that states that this is the case says that donors may opt to not have the work of art be owned by the city of Detroit. So we have changed our deed of gift. It's not quite finished yet. Changing so that becomes the default, the second half of that clause.
Is there another question?
If the horse hasn't already
Of course, we're
bolted.
pretty close to the end now. Oh, okay, and then you next, and then that will be it. Yes.
My name is Suzanne Quigley, and I recently did a little bit of work for the Detroit Institute of Arts in inventorying the collection of a collector here in New York and I asked him, and I was doing this because the Detroit Institute of Arts is expecting to get the collection, which the donor is more than happy to give also. And I asked him, how do you feel about this whole situation? Are you anxious about giving your works to the DIA? And he said, absolutely not. This is not going to happen.
Were you aware of that, Graham?
That he's not going to give?
He's absolutely going to give with no compunction whatsoever.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah.
So that's a good sign.
You don't seem excited.
Well, you know, patrons come in very different shapes and sizes, right?
So we have another question over there. Mm-hmm.
My name is Alan Pensler, and given the strength of Michigan's congressional delegation, I'm wondering if there's been any attempt to lobby. I understand that President Obama has rejected federal funds for Detroit, but politicians have been known to reverse their positions. And I'm wondering if there's been any attempt for any lobbying on a federal level.
Have you been watching the press recently about spending in Washington?
Yes, I have, but I also...
Just wondering there.
If I may say one thing, that in the bill that was just passed last week, I believe there was $2 to $3 billion of pork that was put in for Mitch McConnell for a dam, I believe, in Kentucky. So it's yes, but it still does happen.
As far as we know, there's no meaningful activity on the Hill.
That sort of raised a slightly different question for me. I'm going to just ask this, which is, it seems that what's sacrosanct is not the museum, but has anyone spoken about the stadium, the $400 million or whatever stadium? Why is that not up for grabs? Which is privately owned, actually.
I don't know who owns it.
The stadium in Detroit.
Yeah, it's like $280 million is going to go towards yet another sports stadium owned by a billionaire.
Exactly. Has anyone discussed this openly in Detroit as part of the balance of this?
Well, it's mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to raise the kind of concerns that I can feel in this room right now.
Okay, I just thought I'd throw it in. Well, look, we promised that we would end by a certain time, and we're going to. We have a lovely reception upstairs that I want you all to join. But I thought it might be fitting, before thanking our speakers, to give a quote. It's a couple of thousand-year-old quote from Pliny, Natural History. And it goes like this, and forgive me if I mispronounce the Greek names. King Nicomedes wished to buy Praxiteles' Venus in Knidos, offering to discharge the whole of the city's public debt, which was enormous. The Canadians, however, preferred to suffer the worst that could happen, and they showed their wisdom, for by this statue, Praxiteles made Knidos illustrious. So, a couple of thousands of years ago, people knew the value. If only we all could take that same lesson now. I want you all to join with me. I think you'll agree this was a really fabulous team of speakers.